Welcome back to the Tiga Tactics podcast, a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident martial arts nerds, MANs, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of black belts in 9 different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hello, everybody.
And I'm your other co-host, retired Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, and Ultra-OCR Perperis. Our other co-host, Patrick Vuong, is not joining us today. He is busy. So you just have Conrad and me talking today. And today we're going to be talking about Medusa Edged Weapon System.
All right. Well, I am very excited about this.
Since we don't have Patrick here, wanted to do a deep dive into a different system, like we've done with some of the other ones when we talked about C-Lot or we talked about Modern Army Combatives. So today we're doing Medusa Edged Weapon System. So I'm an instructor in that specific style system, whatever we want to call it. So why don't we start off? Why don't you start off asking the questions, Dr. Conrad, and I'll respond.
All right. So right away, why the interest in this system?
So good question. Through the military, when I look at special forces and how we approach combating bad guys, well, we obviously look at the good guy, quote unquote, the good guy systems using like their technology and air power and all these different things. But then as unconventional warfare, special forces guys, we also look at what the bad guys are doing. And when we look at what the bad guys, like the techniques they use, we can essentially use their own techniques against them if we're doing similar warfare. So when I started looking at martial arts, at some point, at some point it dawned on me I was going to have to look at the same model through the martial arts lens. Mm-hmm. And that specifically involves looking at the way criminals and bad guys are using weapons and like their attack patterns and their systems, and gonna have to look at some martial arts, quote unquote, that are prison or criminal based. And at my job at the combatives gym, everyone in my gym kind of had like a specialty. We had like a judo guy and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and kind of everyone cross-trained. But I was like the knife guy, and I realized while I was there, I was like, well, if there's any time to learn anything, it's like right now, because I can pass it off to guys who are like the next generation of soldiers. So I kind of even further that I always had an interest in knife stuff, but I really started researching it because I wanted to be able to pass some of that off to the next generation of soldiers, essentially.
Very cool. And so how did you even hear about this system?
You know, through, actually a lot of it through Patrick. Patrick would always like and share various knife companies. And at some point I liked a knife company, I think that he had liked, or maybe he had shared or posted something about. And anytime I see a book I related to martial arts that I'm interested in, I typically buy it and read it. I think there's a lot of value in researching stuff through books, in addition to obviously in-person, online training, all that stuff. And there was a book called Medusa Edged Weapon System. I was kind of curious to see what it was. So I picked up a copy. Very short book, very thin, but it kind of encapsulates the simplicity of the system in that book. And that cracked the door open there.
I see. So you were learning the system while you were still in active duty then, I guess.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And what's the history of the system?
Yeah, it's interesting. So essentially, we're going to see a lot of crossover points with some of the Tiga Tactics stuff here. The guys who started at Michael and Seth Raymond were looking at various knife systems, being like, a lot of it seems too complicated. There's kind of got to be a simpler solution. And then like, well, what's actually being used? And they basically studied CCTV video. They looked at prison video. They talked to prison guards, and they basically looked at what the bad guys were doing and developed, obviously the bad guys don't teach this as like a quote unquote system, but they looked at what they were doing and basically codified those movements and those attack patterns into a bladed system. And it's very simple. I mean, you can literally teach someone the entire system in a couple of hours in a weekend, and they're more functional. Again, just kind of like Tiga Tactics, and it is they say brutal, simple, and violent. I believe some of the catchphrases they like to use.
All right. And what's Michael and Seth's background?
That's a good, interesting. I don't actually know their full background, as far as like what martial arts and stuff they've studied. I just kind of know that they had this interest in, again, bladed systems, prison combatives type stuff. And I know both of them are very big guys. I haven't actually met them in person, but I think they're both fairly large individuals. I am not. I'm the opposite. I'm about 5'6". So,
what was your training like in the system? Was it all online, or did you do seminars, or how did you train in the system?
So after basically, I read the book again, very short book, but encapsulates the system, written by a guy named Jason, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, and I liked some of the stuff in there, and I wanted to teach some of that stuff to my soldiers, but I also didn't want, like, I didn't want to, I could have just taken what I learned from the book and just reproduce some of it. I also kind of wanted to give like credit to the guys who had done it, and then also, try to get some sort of in-person instruction to, find out what I'm missing, because obviously you can only transmit so much information in books. Right. So, you in person is always the best if that's not available online. So I started reaching out to people who I found who were instructors in the system, basically searching through YouTube and obviously the author of the book, Jason. And then I started reaching out, trying to find an instructor in the Midwest, and there was none in the Midwest. So I basically, contacted the head of the system, who's got an Instagram page, Medusa Edged Weapon System. And he had recommended me to a couple of people that were like kind of local, but not really. So still not really within driving distance. So I ended up doing basically all the training online, essentially.
All right. And what's the training online like? How many classes are there weekly, monthly classes, or just a private type training?
It's private type training. Like I said, it's pretty simple. I'm an instructor. There's other instructors. Everyone's going to do it a little bit differently. When I got the instruction, it was basically like one really long class, a couple hours. I think it was like 2 hours or something. And then after that, from that point forward, it involved me sending videos demonstrating technique in different parts of the system back and forth over the next couple of weeks before essentially testing. Usually when I teach Medusa, I like to teach it over 2 classes. So I not only teach like the actual Medusa curriculum, but I usually also like tack on a bunch of stuff. A lot of the stuff is actually from Tiga Tactics, some of the real world type stuff to kind of help bolster out where I think, not necessarily where the system is missing, but I like to make sure they have a broader understanding of knife combatives and like, the real world consequences of carrying a knife or having to use a knife in self-defense.
Right. I'm pretty sure they don't teach that when you're in prison, right?
They do not. They do not. Yeah, and the guys, the other instructors in Medusa are very like it's not like they're just like random dudes who picked up the system and then like this is all they teach and this is the only, like, all of them have they're kind, again, they're just like you and Patrick, where they have like certifications in different systems and they've studied different arts. And just like you and Patrick, they were like, well, what does it really look like, and what's it going to look like on the streets if I actually have to use it? And essentially, the prison shanking knifing system is essentially what it looks like.
So, who was your instructor?
So Jason was my instructor, the guy that wrote the book. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So what's Jason's background?
He does a lot of World War II combatives. I interviewed him on my podcast on Strength and Speed, where we deep dive into his full background. But he had done various like traditional style martial arts growing up. I think he did karate at one point. I think he did some judo at one point. And kind of his focus now is like World War II combatives and kind of edge weapon systems.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what, in a nutshell, what's the curriculum like?
So the curriculum is, again, as I said, very simple. It's essentially shock, latch, and stab is like their 3 techniques, right? So, shock is you basically stun the person enough so you can access your weapon, your tool, essentially a blade, right? So it's usually typical targets, eyes, throat, groin, kind of the scraping down the shin there. Latch is you latch onto them, right? So collar tie, Russian tie, arm drag, whatever, shirt grab, belt grab, pull the shirt over the top of the head, all those different, any sort of like grappling base that you can use. And then essentially from that point, you access your weapon and strike, put holes in the bad guy until he stops attacking you. Essentially, I like that it plug. It's just like Tiga Tactics, how like you're you can plug it into whatever skill set you already have. It like it plugs in to whatever skill set you have, right? So I wouldn't, you know, I think that's nice because it's not like, oh, well, if I have a Krav Maga background or I have a karate background, like it's not going to work with that. Like, no, what's going to work with that? But like your strikes might look a little bit different and your latches might look a little different. Or if you're a wrestler, right, your latches might look a little bit different than someone who, you know, just played hockey growing up, is used to hockey brawls. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it sounds very similar to you know, Tiga Tactics, you know, earn your draw and then
Yeah.
be able to access your tool and then put that into the into the fight there.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things I like, right? So I've gone down the rabbit hole deep diving weapon systems, and there was the only two I've seen. So every system has a draw somewhere in there, right? So I'm not saying the other systems don't have draws. The only two I've seen that always start from a draw is Tiga Tactics and Medusa. Those are the only two I've seen like that. A lot of the other ones are like, well, you know, you just maintain good situational awareness and you just make sure you have your weapon out. It's like, well, like I get that, but like sometimes your situation is going to fail you, right? So like, right. I like that you have to work from a draw. I think that's and I like that as being like the first step of the system, regardless of what it is. So.
Very cool. And is there a specific type of knife that they use in Medusa?
No, there's not. So there's like, you know, all these different knife systems. A lot of them have like a knife associated with them, which honestly I love. I think that's fun. I think that's cool. It's there's no like official Medusa knife or anything like that. And you know, because it's a point driven system, right? It's meant for thrusting. It doesn't necessarily matter what type of knife you have. It doesn't matter if you got, you know, forward grip or reverse grip. It doesn't matter if you're edge in or edge out. Essentially, all those things don't matter. So it simulates another thing I like. It simulates a lot of like the stress and the confusion of like real violence and real combat. Did you see the video of the Ukrainian and the Russian soldier knife fighting each other?
No, I have not.
Oh my! I got to send this to you.
Okay.
It is, just for you and then anybody who has seen it. It is not. I'm right. Like this is what knife violence looks like. It is not pretty. There's nothing glamorous
okay.
about it.
I think I saw that. Yeah. I think I saw that. Is that like a body cam?
It's a body cam. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's very graphic. If someone looks it up.
Yeah, I'll send you a second one too. That's there was like a POV drone shot of the ending too.
Wow. Okay.
I'll send you that one too. But both from my experiences downrange and from like doing scenarios in the combatives gym, like it's so chaotic, right? So, you know, when you're trying to make sure your edge is oriented the right way and that like it's just chaos, right? There's like arms and limbs flying everywhere. And I like that again, the simplicity of the system. You're not concerned about like, okay, I'm going to hit, you know, this artery and disable this limb and this you know, go for angle 4.5 and, you know, abanico. It's just like, it's like take the pointy end, put it into the bad guy. Like, you know, like what we say when we teach EDC knife stuff, right? It's good targets, great targets. So, you know, kind of take your pick.
Right. And so why is it called Medusa?
Good question. I want to say the explanation they gave was it's like it's I'm gonna mess it up. It's like beautiful in its simplicity or something like that, right? Like Medusa is supposed to be like, depending on which version of like Medusa's quote unquote history or narrative you read, she's supposed to be like beautiful, but at the same time it'll turn you to stone rather. So that's kind of the explanation I got.
And so let's go into you talked a lot about the positives. It's a practical system. You start from realistically from the draw. You know, nobody's walking around with a knife in their hand. right?
Yeah.
And so, what's some negatives from the system? What are things that you feel could be improved or should be improved upon?
Like I feel like most any combative system, we run into this problem all the time where when it's that simple, people learn it and then it's like, all right, I guess I'm good. I guess I don't need to train anymore.
Oh,
Um, so the lack of the good news is the simplicity. The bad news is the lack of depth
mm-hmm.
means it's less. I feel like you have like a less of an urgency to train. So I feel like I don't train it as much as I should, although it does get trained when I do some other arts. Obviously, like any sort of grappling art is going to help build on Medusa based skills. Any sort of striking art is going to help with that first shock. And then various knife arts are going to help with the shock latch to the stab, the final portion there. But like as a standalone, I have to remember to like, hey, maybe I should, instead of working on this other system we're working on at the time, maybe I should just like refresh my Medusa stuff just to continue to get more reps on it. So I'd say that's one, and the other one I'd say is, again, not that they don't teach us as part of the official curriculum, but when I teach, like I said, I talk a lot about all the normal stuff that you guys teach when you talk knife combatives. So stuff about legality and what real world knife violence looks like, and obviously using one, like how that's going to be viewed in a court, which is always negative, right? Anyone who's carrying a knife for self-defense has to understand that it will, like when the like you defend yourself, when the police show up, they will think you're the bad guy, like
Yeah,
almost 100%, right? Because there's blood everywhere and
right.
you're holding a knife, right? So you have to be aware of things like that. You have to be aware of the public perception of those things. Obviously, it's only used in lethal self-defense, right?
Mhm.
I'm not drawing a knife to scare someone off, right? Like I'm defending myself or someone else who's innocent, or my loved ones.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
something people sometimes forget. This is lethal force. When you use a blade, that is a deadly weapon right there. And some people think, oh, I'm just going to use this tool and injure to a degree. It's almost like drawing your firearm. You kind of don't shoot
exactly.
to injure to a degree. You shoot for center mass, and so
That's right.
people often forget that.
Yeah, I mean, when we teach combatives, right? When I if I walk into a room or one of my guys walks into a room and there's someone with a knife, rules of engagement, as long as they were within the rules, like we'll shoot them. Like I don't have to wait for him to start stabbing me to shoot him, right? Like if he's holding the knife and doesn't put it down by the time I bring my rifle up and maybe give him a command, like yeah, I'm starting to fire at that point. I'm not waiting for him to latch onto me before I try to defend myself at that
Right,
point.
right.
You know, obviously people need to follow their ROE, their rules of engagement for the military, but um, when we teach combatives, that was my like, oh, I'm in a room, there's a guy with a knife, like if he doesn't drop it immediately and put his hands up, like it's game on at that point. So.
Mhm. I guess the shock part where before you draw your blade, how do they train that? Is that like an old school karate where you just kind of strike in the air, or are they using pads, or how are they training that?
Mix, right? So I mean, you can do air. Obviously, that's the least preferred. Pads are a little bit better. A lot of the guys that train have Bob versus, so the old punching dummy body opponent bag Bob, but with the one
Mm-hmm.
with the arms.
Mm.
That one's always better for any sort of training than the Bob that's just like a torso with no arms,
You're right.
right? Because the one with the torso with no arms, like honestly, like it's marginally better than a bag in my opinion, right? Because you're moving into spaces that his arms would be in the way, so you don't have to deal with those distractions. You don't have to worry about um when I first started training martial arts. I remember with the Bob with the arms, I would like move into a space sometimes, and like the still body opponent bag would like punch me in the face, and I'd be like, "Oh right, I should keep my hands up if I'm moving in that direction." So I think that is a much better tool.
Mhm.
So a lot of people primarily use Bob versus as their opponent, as their trainer partner. But then, ideally you get to do some reps on another human who's going to provide a little bit of resistance. Just like anything, there's a trade off, right? If I can strike my Bob as many times as I want in the throat as hard as I can, and he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that to another human being without them getting upset.
Right.
So you have to hold back on some of the strikes, but typically the latches are going to be a little bit better, right? Because the person's moving and their arms are engaged and they resisting. And then obviously these stabs are not going to be as good, right? Because again, I can't full force, strike into my opponent with a training knife or a training implement, whatever I'm using, and it just like a lot of other kind of short bladed systems, a lot of the movements can be used with non-lethal type tools or less lethal type tools, like we talked about, flashlights, coup batons, and stuff like that, where you're just using it as an impact weapon, right? So shock, latch, and then like use the impact portion.
Very cool. Uh, so to wrap this up, if somebody's interested in this type of training, where would you go to start training in Medusa?
So the Medusa Edged Weapon System, they have an Instagram page. That's a good kind of primary point to reach out to. They'll a lot of times be able to direct you to one of the specific instructors. We have like a private instructors group. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, like I teach it, right? So I'm available to do like Zoom online training, and like I said, it can be done. Typically, like I said, I break it into 2 classes, and then from that point forward, it's going back and forth usually for a couple of weeks, sending videos. Hey, let me see this. Hey, let me see a different hand draw. Hey, let me see, mistakes, right? So like contingency plans, stuff like that. Hey, I want to see more of X, Y, or Z in your body mechanics and stuff like that. That's kind of typical. So you can basically just reach out to me, and I can either put you in touch with someone or reach out to the Medusa Edged Weapon System official Instagram page. And a lot of instructors, myself included, will like I'll take a look at you before I'm like, yeah, so I should definitely teach you this. Like if you're posting crazy stuff online, right? Like I'm not. What's fun is this. So everyone's so nice, within the group. Guys are always talking about legalities and kind of nuances of things that not part of the official curriculum, but it's part of the knowledge base of the instructors.
Hmm.
And like the simplicity of the system is purposeful, right? Like there's always talk of like, oh, we should add this, and it's like, oh, no, because you run into the opposite problem with a lot of other martial arts, right? Like it turns into like, oh, well, let me just add this. Let me just add this. And now you have this like, we've gone back then the opposite side of the spectrum, where now I've got a full system that takes a decade to learn,
Mm-hmm.
where people are not like there's a period where they're not as proficient, right? Like instead of getting more proficient, they're thinking about moves and they're actually like less prepared than they were when they started. Yeah.
So I guess people can reach out to you if they want to learn from you as well too. Do you have? I think you do have material, Medusa material on your Patreon page as well too. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah. I cover some of the stuff in my Patreon page. I cover some of the different, just kind of what it is, different attack angles and stuff like that. And yeah, yeah, if people want to know a little more but not ready to commit, they can obviously sign up for my Patreon, and I can do that. Or if you want to talk to me personally and ask some more questions, you can do that. And yeah, I think some of the concern also with like a prison-based system, right? There's no glorification of like prison culture or anything like that. There's no there is like non-lethal options, right? So like if you theoretically, right, I shock the guy and he just drops, then you just walk away.
Mhm.
You don't automatically like grab him and then like continue the attack, right? Or you shock and you latch and you take him to the ground or whatever. Again, you can even stop all the way up to like the final moment where you have to defend yourself and you hit him with like the backside of the knife or something like that, or the impact tool, whatever it may be, right? So it's not always lethal. That being said, they're right. If I'm defending myself, it's probably because someone's life is in jeopardy. Otherwise, it's a social aggression situation, and I'm just gonna walk away, right? Like I'm gonna let my ego take a hit every single time, right? I'm beyond the point where I need to fight for people's quote unquote honor in a bar or something like that, right? that is petty, and that is a bad idea in the 2020s when people videotape everything, and everyone's a victim, even if the guy attacked you, type stuff. So, or threatening people, right? I mean, yeah, crazy world we live in.
Yeah, and that goes in alignment with Tiga Tactics. We say destroy if you must, and that just means the destruction of that action towards you. So as soon as that action stops, we stop as well too. We see an attitude adjustment. That's all we're looking for.
Exactly.
But if that action doesn't stop, we continue on. But if it stops, then we stop as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, when I started looking at Medusa, I saw what for me what Tiga Tactics is to combatives, the simplicity, essentially the simplicity and the effective response. Medusa was for knife combatives, essentially. So, my personal, Evans, if my personal blend of knife combatives essentially would be essentially Tiga Tactics and Medusa at the base level, right? That's what the latch component I feel like is a little bit better for soldiers, just because how do I want to say, we're not there's we're already in combat, right? So me latching onto someone and obviously ending the fight is I feel like viewed less of a big deal as opposed to a civilian doing it. But
right. I think the latching also serves people if they're big or strong or have a degree of physicality that they can implement. Sometimes if you're small and you latch on, that might be a detriment
it
to
could
latch on to someone bigger.
it could be, yeah, it could be, yeah.
Yeah, especially once you have good tool in your hand. Tiga Tactics would to contrast that latching part. We like to put the steel between us and our threat, so that our body parts don't get in the way of the tool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why we might not latch. There's always a reason for and a time for different tools to be used. That being said, Tiga Tactics, we like to hide behind our tool, stay behind the steel, just like a firearm. If you have a firearm, you want to stay behind that muzzle, 180-degree right there. So we kind of approach it that way.
Yeah, and I mean, that also obviously very good technique, right? Like I was just talking about, we were talking about earlier, with the stress and the chaotic nature of combat. I think a lot of people in general who train like knife combatives don't consider hey, you might cut yourself. Like, you might want to be careful because that thing is sharp, right? You don't, and keeping the blade in front of as the lead point, there's value in that. The hard, I'd say, the contrast is a lot of times in training, when you're doing empty hand versus blade, a lot of times the blades in the rear hand, because people can they're defend it and maintain it, right? But again, it's not a live blade. Sometimes when we drill too much, we can start developing habits that are not necessarily realistic on the actual threat level. So, just something for people to be aware of.
All right. Well, that seems like a very good overview of Medusa. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, just if people are interested in, feel free to contact me or check it out. There's various podcasts. A bunch of the Jason and Seth and Michael have been on various podcasts. You can YouTube search them and learn a little bit more if you're interested, or reach out to me, or you can pick up a copy of the book. I think it's on Amazon now. You just search for Medusa Edged Weapon System. Then, like I said, there's instructors kind of spread out throughout the nation. Conrad, do you ever have any interest in looking at any of those prison systems
Oh
or
yeah.
criminal systems?
It's something that I'll probably go get the book. I don't have the book yet, but it's all research. I don't have any feelings left or right about it. I just think it's data, and
Yeah.
it's something that we should investigate if we're serious in protecting ourselves and serious about learning about these types of subjects.
Yeah, I think it's a good attitude. I never, I'm never opposed to learning from someone, regardless of, kind of who they are or what their background is, or I'm always willing to listen. Whether I absorb and be like, this is valuable information I'm going to take and use in the future is a different story, right? But I think maintaining an open ear to various different opinions is a good idea, whether it's martial arts or politics or whatever.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry to our readers, our listeners, after listening to our podcast right now. I am just going to simply override and destroy this Medusa system by creating a Perseus system.
That's a good name. If we do a counter Medusa, that's a really good name. I like it.
I'm just kidding. But very cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing all this with us, with me and our listeners. This is a system I never even knew about until I met you and you started talking about it. So thank you for introducing this.
Yeah, the knife world is very niche, and it gets I'm going to say weird, but in a good way, not as a bad way. It's just different. It's just like any sort of niche topic. It's just different, right? And the knife world is no different than any other niche topic. So, yeah.
All right, very cool. Anything you'd like to promote or talk about before you wrap it up?
We got the runner self-defense seminar coming up. Was it February 23rd? Double check that date, but we'll drop the link down below. Come check that out. Sign up for it. If you can't catch the live, you'll get a recording of it. And then Tiga Tactics just released their seminar schedule for the year.
Yep.
So head over to Team Tiga Tactics on their Facebook page, and you can see the full schedule line up and start blocking off weekends for the rest of your year.
Yep. Yeah. And we sure hope to see you in person, our listeners. And please follow us and catch up and check out that calendar as well too. Mark off your calendars, and we'd love to see you.
Yeah, I'm excited. A lot of good stuff coming this year. Looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll have all three of us back on the podcast for the next episode.
Absolutely. And as we're filming this is the day after, or I'm recording this. This is the day after Lunar New Year. It's the year of the snake. I want to wish you, Evan, and all our listeners a prosperous, happy, and healthy year coming ahead. The snake represents strength. It also represents positive changes and wisdom. So all the best to our listeners, all the best to you and your family there, Evan. We're going to have a wonderful year.
I'm excited. Looking forward to it.